Good morning. It is Thursday, April the 19th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, one of only two true conservatives in the United States of America today, the other one being President Trump. And both of us are true conservatives because we make the presumption for the status quo. And we're speaking to at least I am speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. And today I want to answer the question, is Rush Limbaugh a conservative? And the answer is no. Now, you would think, how can you say that? Because Rush Limbaugh has declared himself a conservative. He says he's a conservative. So how can anyone else, me or anyone else, come along and say, no, he's not? Simple. You're looking at it from a standpoint of what's known in philosophy as subjectivism. The idea of subjectivism is that there is no objective reality, which is basically redundancy. And that there's only separate realities. There's Rush Limbaugh's reality, my reality, your reality. And if in Rush Limbaugh's reality, his mind, he's a conservative, well, then he's a conservative, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. But that presumption is false. The fact of the matter is that reality exists, it is primary, and we know that it exists by the evidence of our senses. It's axiomatic. That means that things are what they are, and that we have to, the objective is definition, or defining things and what it is that they actually are. So you go back then to when you're making definitions, you want to find out what is the essence of the thing that you're trying to define. What is it about this thing that separates it from everything else? What is it about being a conservative that separates being a conservative from being any other type of political entity or political belief in the country or in the world for that matter? And for being conservative, the essence is making the presumption for the status quo. And it is because we ask ourselves, conservative means what? What is it precisely that we are conserving? Are we conserving way of life? Are we conserving the Constitution? Are we conserving guns or the Second Amendment? Are we conserving particular political issues? No, obviously not. Those are, if you define yourself by the issues, you are defining yourself by what Ayn Rand identified as non-essentials. And that's the problem with most people in terms of their political identifications today, is that they define themselves by non-essentials. The essential characteristic of being a conservative is making the presumption for the status quo, because that is in precisely what it is that we're trying to conserve. Conserve, that doesn't mean that we're fanatics and that we are going to protect the status quo from any type of change or threats of change forever. That's not the idea. The idea is, again, we make the presumption. We presume, we know that this is a benevolent universe, and therefore that success is to be expected. So we make the presumption for the status quo. We get up every day and we say, you know what? For most people, most of the time, the world is a pretty good place. The left takes the opposite view. They get up in the morning and they're constantly looking for reform. Not just changes on the margin, but revolutionary change. Because as far as they're concerned, failure is to be expected because the universe is dead set against us. This, of course, flies in the face of everything that we experience each and every day. But that's, again, why it is that the left hates successful people. Why it is that they're against Donald Trump. Why it is that they're against anybody that happens to be wealthy or talented is because Their excuse when you would ask a lefty, well, if the universe is so scary a place, how is it that there's so many people that are able to succeed? If failure is to be expected, how do you account for success in the world? And they would tell you that success comes by one of three ways: either luck, corruption, or cheating, or a combination of the two. So in their mind, everybody that's made, particularly the very successful people, the President Trumps of the world, they are where they are because they got lucky, because they cheated, or a combination of the two. And I'm sure that the Trump haters would prefer to believe that he cheated, or at the very least a combination of cheating and getting lucky. This is why you hear the left always talking about giving back, and that people that are successful need to give back, because it is presumed that they've stolen something, that they've somehow cheated, or, again, they've gotten lucky to get where they are. You very often hear this with the left when sportscasters are interviewing athletes, and the athlete wins an award, the athlete wins a title, and they ask the athlete, do you feel lucky? The athlete doesn't understand the philosophical underpinnings of that question. So most of the time, just to sound humble, they say, well, yes. As a matter of fact, I feel lucky. I'm a lucky man. I'm very, very... And they're just playing into the hands of the left culturally. They are confirming for everybody that watches this program or reads the interview what it is that the left is saying, that the only way to succeed is to get lucky in this particular case. So... and therefore, the individual in question, the athlete in question, should give back. But as a matter of fact, it's false. Success is to be expected. And giving back is for people that have borrowed or stolen something. For the rest of us, it's called charity. And I have certain moral obligations to be charitable, religious and otherwise. So that's one of the things that you want to do, of course, is make sure that when somebody's asking you to give back, you make sure you say that you're going to make a donation instead. In any case, the point that we're getting to here in a roundabout way is that Rush Limbaugh thinks he is a conservative for two reasons. Number one, because he says so. Number two, because he's been told so. Because he's been asked, at some point in his life he was asked, where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand on this issue? Where do you stand? Or he was presented with a menu in which, maybe on television, in the newspaper, whatever. Usually that's the way it's going to go about, is you'll hear people talk about it on the news. So-and-so's a liberal because he believes in this. So-and-so is a conservative because he believes or has a position, a certain particular position on a particular issue, on abortion, on the budget, etc. And that's not true. It also puts it's weak to put yourself in that position, because then you become dogmatic. You become wedded to positions that may, over the course of time, end up become obsolete. But if you're going to identify yourself as a conservative, and a conservative means, let's say, that you absolutely 100% support the horse and buggy industry, well, what happens when automobiles come along? Where are you going to be then? You're going to be a fanatic anti-automobile person, even though automobiles are better for the average individual than are horses and buggies. So, again, Rush Limbaugh's not a conservative. So you got to ask yourself then, well, okay, Ron, what is he then? If he's not a conservative, he's definitely not a liberal. No, not exactly. There are some conservatives that are actually in the liberal camp, even though they consider themselves to be conservatives. But Rush Limbaugh isn't one of them. The essence of liberalness is the making the presumption for change and the never-ending pursuit of a perfect society. And Rush Limbaugh is not exactly looking for that. I wouldn't classify him either as an independent. I think the best way to classify Rush Limbaugh is as a reactionary. that the vast majority of people that call themselves conservatives are, in fact, reactionary. And that's because they call themselves conservatives because they think that where you stand politically is where you stand on the issues. And again, all that does, if you become wedded to positions on certain issues, you become reactionary. It's also the dynamic of his show is that the vast majority of times Rush Limbaugh is not talking about or emphasizing conservatism, or doing a values. And it's, notice I said values, not conservative values, because there is no such thing. There's only values. But that what he's doing is reacting to the left. He gets up and for show prep, he goes in and looks at articles about what it is that the liberals, the socialists, the Democrats have done, are doing, or are planning to do. And then he goes ahead and has a whole show in which he basically reacts to what it is that they're doing. Again, a bad idea, because number one, you spend your whole 3 hours of your show promoting the left, making stars out of people like that he refers to. The one guy is Pencil Neck, and some of these other, the other person that he refers to is AOC, and you help to turn these people into stars. You also help to add some audience members to CNN and MSNBC and places like that are otherwise in the ratings cellar. And so why you would want to help them, I don't know. But that's what you end up doing. And you end up discussing and promoting, as a matter of fact, liberalism and socialism, although doing it inadvertently and indirectly. So what he should be doing, again, is promoting values, going out and talking about what it is that makes a conservative, and applying it to various types of situations, making the presumption for the status quo. Any type of an investigation that's going on, then you would be making that, again, let's say the situation with President Trump, where he was investigated for 2 years. We would presume that he is innocent and that he's going to be declared not guilty, or that that there's going to be a conclusion that he had committed no wrongdoings until we get evidence to the contrary. And so that kind of situation where you're going to go ahead and promote the status quo. Another way of putting it is that you're going to get usually from the left, your friends and relatives on the left that will come up to you and they're trying to promote something, because that's what the left is always doing. And you will have them asking you, hey, why not this? Why not change? One of the recent ones that changes that was made in the state of California was the legalization of the recreational use of marijuana. And the way that was done was the left simply came out constantly over years and decades and said, why not marijuana? Why not legalize marijuana? Why not, why not, why not, why not? And that's not the question. That's the question if you're trying to agitate for change. But for the people that are making the presumption for the status quo, the question is why? Why should we? How are we going to be better off as a society, as a state, if we legalize the recreational use of marijuana? The same thing that, and that's basically what conservatives never do. What ends up happening is the conservatives end up in a trap where they try to prove a negative. When anybody's asking you why not, that's what they're doing, is daring you to prove a negative. And proving a negative is impossible. It cannot be done. So when somebody comes to you and says, why not, you have to respond by saying, well, why should I? Why not legalize the recreational use of marijuana? Why should I? And so again, a true conservative is actually open-minded, not dogmatic. A lot of times the left will ask you, do you have an open mind? If you're a true conservative, the answer is yes. Go ahead and prove your point. And 99.9% of the time, if the liberal knows what they're doing, they won't bother. Because the liberals can't. If you're starting with the presumption that reality doesn't exist, the only thing that you can do to get people to do what you want is manipulate and psychologically bully and intimidate. But in any case, getting back to it, no, Rush Limbaugh is not a conservative. Rush Limbaugh is a reactionary. But of course, you're not going to get, I'm sure, get Rush Limbaugh to, or any of his hardcore supporters to agree with that. But it doesn't matter. Reality is not up for a vote, so it doesn't matter whether they agree or not. And that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening and have a great day.